In this video, we're going to look at how we can connect the PLC and some of its sensors and inputs and outputs, how we can send that data up onto our cloud device, our IBM Watson storage area. Okay, so in a previous video, we've seen how to do it with the likes of like a ESP32 and Arduino, and how we could get the sensor readings up. Now what I'm going to do is going to make another connection to IBM Watson that is going to handle my PLC stuff. So it's going to be a similar process as the way we set up our ESP. And we're going to call this our Siemens PLC. Let's give it a name, Siemens PLC. Okay, so we're going to create a device, Siemens PLC, and we're just going to call this PLC IO. So the IO statuses and stuff coming from our PLC. Okay, you can put in all the model numbers and things like that, but we're happy enough to continue, and we're going to generate an API key for that, and we're going to connect the device and generate a token. Okay, so remember, we need to keep a lot of this information safe, so I'm just going to find my old notepad and save some of this. So I've got my notepad. We're going to copy and paste these details in. It's always important to save these initially because you won't have access to some of this data after it's created, okay, and around security. Okay, now look, mine's publicly available here, but we will be deleting this soon enough after. But it's just to show good transparency of what all you need, especially with the tokens. Okay, so we're going to save that data for later. I can come back and I can see my device has been created. Okay, so now what I got to do is I got to create a protocol or use a protocol that can send this data up onto IBM Watson, that can link me to IBM Watson. Okay, so what I got to do is I've got to use my local version of Node-RED. So I have Node-RED here open locally, or running locally, so you can see it running locally. And I'm just using, I know I'm using a web browser here, but this is still a local version of Node-RED. And I've got my PLC connected and my Ethernet cable is connected. And I can see from what we did in previous videos, we've got some connections here from the PLC. We're using an OPC protocol to create that. So I want to read this data in, and then I eventually want to push this data. So we've used OPC to read the data in, and then we're going to push the data up until the IBM Watson account. We're going to use some of the IBM libraries to essentially connect us to our specific IBM Watson table that we're looking for. And that fundamentally uses an MQTT protocol that will get us up there. So this will be quite interesting. Now, again, coming from other videos, we did a little bit of PLC logic. We create a bit of a data block where this variable will change every couple of seconds. It just kind of increments up. And then what I want to use is, I want to use this little bit of logic here that will basically allow me to monitor the data, or monitor an output here, but also allow me to interact with it, that we could maybe read or write values to it. Okay, now we will see this later on of how these are going to be activated and stuff, and how we're going to link it really to the Arduino. But for the moment, if we strip it back down, the little bit of logic I have here is I can press the start button and it will turn on a memory bit. We're just calling this an output, okay, OPCU output. And I'm going to latch that on. And then I have a reset button that will break it. Also with this, I can use another memory bit to turn on this memory bit and latch it on. And I can use another memory bit to break it. So really what I have is I have a real button and a memory bit that could start my system. And I have a reset button, or I have another memory bit that can reset the system. So I'm using a memory bit to replicate some of my inputs. It turns on a memory bit, and then that memory bit drives a real output on the PLC. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. Essentially, I have two ways to turn on my output, and I have two ways to turn it off. One of the ways is with real devices. The other is with memory bits that will come from it. That will be the link to my dashboard. It will turn on a memory bit, my PLC, which will then turn on the output, the physical output. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Now, so what do I want to monitor here? Because I've got my OPC UA client, I'm reading that in, and I want to monitor a couple of things. So I'm probably going to monitor the variable that's constantly changing for me. Okay, and then we're going to monitor another couple of things. We would like to see the output, probably. That would be a really nice one to see. So the actual value of, let's say, this motor. Okay, well, let's monitor that one, and that might be all we really want to watch. Then when we want to write to the PLC, we are going to use some push buttons to maybe turn it on, turn it off. Okay. So I need to make sure I have the right kind of namespace index for the OPCU protocol set up. So we've done this in previous videos where we've used UA Expert to make sure that we have this correct. So some of the ones that I want to look at is the actual output, so the motor. So I can see that's NS equals 3, and the string is motor. So let's go ahead and bring that in. So it's going to be motor. So I'm going to read the variable in, and we're going to read the value of the motor. Okay, and the motor is, sorry, that's Boolean. And that's really all I'm going to do here. I will inject it at a kind of repeatable time. We'll say maybe every half second. So the value will come in. I'll actually enable that. And that will read into my client. And then I will want to display this out on a dashboard, okay? And I'm going to just take a very basic approach to my dashboard. It's just going to be some text, okay? Now, in theory, that should be good, but let me just see. We'll come back to the dashboard now in a second. Basically, that should be good, but there is another thing that we need to do to set up how we actually allocate, this item to make sure it displays to this one here and that this one links to this. So we actually have to do a little bit of code in between it to help filter the data through, okay? And it just gets a little bit awkward, and it's really around syntax. You'll see because this has got 4 quotes, oops. Kind of got double quotation marks around it. It actually gets very difficult to handle that, and we'll see now in a second. So what I actually need to do is I need to copy in use some functions. Okay, I've got one saved previously. So basically, and I'll show you it now in a second. Basically, what we're doing is we're just using this function, a command, and it'll allow us to write a little bit of code. Okay. And what I do is I create an empty message and I put the topic. So a message has a topic and it has a payload. And what I do is I have to save the topic to match it to the topic that's in here. So we know this is the topic, okay? So I want to now save this into a variable and I'll basically call it topic 1, okay? The reason I'm doing that is because when we come out on the other side, and I'm going to have to just spread this out a little bit, I need to have another function that will allocate the correct memory across here. Okay, so I need to pull that over and this over here. Okay. So in this function, you'll now see I will be trying to save values of what each topic is equal to. So the value of each memory bit or each output. I'm trying to save that into what's called some global memory on Yes, so sorry. Basically what we're doing is we need to use these topics so that we can say, well, you know, if this generic topic equals the topic that we want, this is where we want to store the information. And we're going to have var2 and the value of motor. And we're not going to use anything else. So we're not only taking in 2 bits of data. So that's what we have there. And we've got to return that out. Do I need to return anything there? No. Okay. So it'll become a little bit clearer hopefully now when we start to wire a few more things up. So what's happening is we're trying to read in the value of this. We need to save the value of each topic. Okay, so I actually haven't done that. So that needs to come true. So what I'm doing is I'm saving it locally in here. It reads the data and then it outputs the data and it's going to save it in some global memory for me. And I will want to put that onto a dashboard. So what we're going to do is we will actually return both messages. So message 1 and message 2. Sorry. Because we've got 2 outputs coming out, we want to increase that. So if you had, you know, multiple, you need to expand this out for 8 inputs, 8 outputs or something like that in the PLC, you'd be expanding this right out. And now we can say, well, the first output is going to go in here, the second output is going to go here. So I can change this text, this label, to be my variable 2, and this one will be my motor. Okay, so I'm hoping that's making a little bit of sense. What we'll do is we'll deploy that for a minute. Let's just see, have we any issues? No. So we can see every half a second this data is coming through. We can see we've got a number of 91 and a value of false coming. And that 91 should change to 92 every 10 seconds, right? So that's reading it in. Now what I'm doing also, let's delete that and let's look at some of the memory, the context data. What I'm also doing here is I'm saving some topics and the value of my variable. Now you can see there's the topic listed out and it's around the right quotations. Now what I've done is I forgot to just change this a little bit. This will now be topic 2. So I can do that. Let's deploy this. So we should have an extra topic in there and we've got both values there of where they are. And if anything changes, they would change. So really what I have to do with these functions and stuff is I'm trying to save these topics and their values into the memory in here in Node-RED. Because then I'm going to use it from here to get it up into the IoT Watson, the IBM Watson. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to make a little bit of space here. I'm going to come back to some of that writing there. But we want to focus on getting the data out of here and into IBM Watson. So I'm trying to get it out of here and into IBM Watson. Now this is where, and we're going to do that on a timestamp as well. So I'm going to use a pretty similar timestamp and have that running. And this is how I'm going to sort of push data out to IBM Watson. Okay. Now I will need another function. I'm just going to copy this one I've done earlier, paste this in. Right, so what do I want to do? Every couple of seconds, I want to get some of the data that I've saved. So I'm just going to get the data for Well, we had var2, and it was also saved as motor. So I'm getting this from my global memory in here, so let's just delete this one. And then we want to write PLC1, PLC2. Okay. So that's going to send this payload, and you see it's kind of like an MQTT protocol. Has to be written in that format, and it's going to push it up to our IBM IoT device. Okay. So, oops, we got to click a registered device. Okay. And then we got to edit the credentials. Okay. So I'm going to go back to these credentials that we are looking for. So copy this in, paste that in. The device was type. This one here, paste that in. It was the PLC IO. And then we had the token that we needed. Okay, we're going to update that. And that's going to send that now up to the cloud. And we should see a connection happening between here and where did we have this device here getting connected. Okay. So let's see how this starts to come together. Okay, we have one that's not connected. So we're not getting a connection here at the moment. Okay, so something wrong. We've that data coming in and we're trying to send that up and we are getting a connection. Okay, the client is not receiving it. So let's just double check what is happening here. We'll turn this off for a second. And let me just double check. Okay, sorry about that. Actually something I only just found out. I needed to be on my own personal hotspot because I'm on a college kind of public Wi-Fi here and it was blocking the commands going out. So I actually just had to use my hotspot and then it allowed me to connect in here and send some data up. So it actually took me a while to figure that out. Didn't know what was going wrong there. Now my system may be a little bit slower, but we'll see now my PLC is connected. So let's turn some of these values back on, or some of these events. Let's turn them back on. Let's turn this back on. Now we should have those commands. Let's deploy them. Those commands should be getting sent out. And if we look in on our IBM Watson, if we look in here and look at some of our logs, or sorry, our events, my bad, we should start to see those. Variable 1 was 42, variable 2 is false. And that's the way those values are coming in. Labels are maybe a little bit awkward on them. What we really should say var2, and we should call this motor just to get the language a little bit better. Let's deploy that. We come back in here. Now we can see this coming through. And let's say if we did turn this on, we'll actually activate the output. We'll see that come true. So my system's probably just a little bit slow here at the moment. I probably need to download in an updated bit of code. Give me a second. So now if I was to, let's modify this one to 1. My output is now on. If I modify this to 0, it'll stay on. And now I should see that come true in here. So the data is being successfully popped up to IBM Watson. You can see those values being read very quickly, every half a second, coming in and pushing that data in. If I were on my TIA portal, if we go ahead and modify it to 0, sorry, modify this to 1, turn this on, and modify it to 0, we should see that reflected in our IBM Watson now. So in a bit of a long-winded way, we have got the data. I'm going to stop pushing the data now just to reduce down everything that's happening. So we've got the data, we've read it in, and then we're pushing it up to the IBM Watson through the API key that we set up. The difficult part and the awkward part is I need to use certain functions to store the topic value and then to actually store the values locally in my node-RED. Okay, so I need to store it here and then eventually put that into one protocol JSON format that would then send it all at once up to the IBM Watson. Okay, now what we could also do here is we could add a little bit of user interaction for my memory bits to overwrite the values and have a bit of a dashboard even just locally here for the actual system. Now the video's gone on a bit long, and I think we've seen this dashboard here, but this isn't the main dashboard that we want. We want to get back up. We've got all the data now coming in, and we have both devices connected. They'll be pushing the data into IBM Watson. We will then want to go into our node-RED version on the cloud and create a cloud dashboard to actually interact with that.